Okay, sir. A 24-year-old female homemaker has presented with fever, myalgia, arthralgia, anorexia, tiredness, and weight loss of 2 kg for the past 1 year. While working, as in drawing water or cutting wood, she experienced an aching pain in the left arm and forearm, and then left arm, forearm, and the shoulders. And she also suffered transient loss of consciousness, which recovers fully in 1 minute. On examination, she had a fever of 101 degree Fahrenheit. She was pale. No lymph nodes were palpable. Then thyroid was palpable, but it was not tender. Her BP was found to be 180 over 100 on the right upper limb, and on the left upper limb it was 100 over 70. All other systems were within normal limits, and tenderness was found on the left side of the neck, and pulse rate was 80 per minute, and was regular rhythm.
So analyze this case.
Okay, sir. The main symptoms in her history are fever. She's a young female, and her main symptoms are fever, myalgia, and arthralgia. Anorexia and fever, myalgia, and arthralgia. The other symptoms are constitutional symptoms, and weight loss is not significant because it is only 2 kilograms over 1 year. So the differential for fever, myalgia, and arthralgia for 1 year may include HIV, can include malignancies. It can also include autoimmune conditions. And yes, sir.
Would you like to consider the possibility of tuberculosis in this case?
Tuberculosis is possible, but myalgia and arthritis.
It's a treatable option. So treatable option should never be missed.
Okay, sir.
In India, whenever somebody comes with fever, weight loss, always that is one of the important differentials you have to keep in mind. Of course, rarely tuberculosis can produce joint manifestations, but myalgia is unusual. Tiredness, anorexia, weight loss, all can be explained with tuberculosis. Second possibility is that it's a malignancy. Yes, malignancy can have all these features. Third possibility is that autoimmune, that is also possible. HIV, you said, usually when we speak in the forums, public forums, you say retrovirus infection, giving respect to the patient, especially in the bedside. Please don't use the word HIV, say retrovirus infection. Because we are only discussing differential diagnosis. That may not be the case, but that's disappointing for the patient particularly. So respecting their integrity and their social status, we should not use the word HIV patient, say retrovirus infection. So this is one aspect of the game. Second aspect of the game, while working,
she experienced aching pain on the left arm and forearm. Yes. This suggests upper limb claudication.
Claudication. What are different types of claudication you know of? In surgery wards, you have seen patients with TAO who present with claudication. So that is arterial claudication. When you walk, you have ischemia of your muscles. So ischemia produces pain of your muscles. That is arterial claudication. And you stop at a particular distance. This is called claudication distance. And you just stand in a particular position, and then you get a relief. Particularly extended position stand, and then you carry on with your movement. The second type of claudication is called neurogenic claudication. Can you tell something about neurogenic claudication? That is when you have something like a disc prolapse or lumbar canal stenosis. When you start walking, you get neurological symptoms. Patient says aches and pain, just like this, and patient will be forced to stop. But in addition, they'll be having numbness, paresthesia, the sensory complaints. Also, they'll have motor complaint, weakness appearing at the time. And they stand the stooped position and they get absolutely well. They start walking again. This is called neurogenic claudication. So when somebody comes with pain, always think arterial versus neurogenic claudication. That will give important differential diagnosis. Coming to the third category called venous claudication, that is aches and pains you get when you have venous insufficiency of lower limbs after work. heavy work, you rest, then you have severe aches and pains. That's called venous claudication. So there are three types here. So this is upper limb claudication. Okay. So upper limb claudication can be neurogenic, it can be arterial.
Arterial.
So what do you think it is? And what does it produce? It produces transient
loss of consciousness.
So when somebody has got transient loss of consciousness, what are the possibilities that comes to your mind? Loss of consciousness, what are your differential diagnoses?
Syncope.
Yes. So some loss of consciousness is because of trauma-related loss of consciousness. Second one is not traumatic. Under this category, you have what's called syncope. Yes. Second is seizure. Third one is intoxication. Fourth is metabolic like hypoglycemia. They can all have transient loss of consciousness. And the still third category will be psychogenic, under which you will have what's called drop attacks and you will have cataplexy. Can you tell something about drop attacks?
Drop attacks is related to labyrinthitis.
Drop attack is a situation where patient suddenly loses the tone of the muscles and he falls to the ground. That's the third category. Okay, coming to syncope, what are the causes of syncope?
The most common cause is vasovagal syncope.
That's very good answer. Very good. Syncope is the most important type. Yes.
Then it could be due to cardiac causes.
Excellent. Cardiac causes very important. Cardiac cause very important cause. Patient can die. Can you give some examples of cardiac cause?
Due to low volume conditions, hypovolemia.
That's good. Hypovolemia. When you use drugs which are lowering blood pressure, any position, you have it. Both tachycardia and bradyarrhythmia and tachyarrhythmia transiently can produce your loss of consciousness. Sometimes you have structural heart disease like aortic stenosis, which can produce syncopal attacks. Then, of course, we have conditions which produce a sudden cardiac death in families like hypertrophic obstetric cardiomyopathy, Brugada syndrome. So there are prolonged QT interval syndromes and so on, which can all produce cardiogenic type of syncope. Yes. Any other type of syncope you know of? Neurogenic syncope is another one. Yes. There's something called reflex syncope, under which will come reflex. You see some sight which is not good. Somebody stabbing somebody, you just faint. Or you see somebody bleeding, you faint. Reflex. Or somebody give injection to you and you just faint. Okay, that's another type of syncope. Can you tell something about carotid sinus syncope? What is carotid sinus syncope?
Due to pressure on the bilateral pressure on the carotid sinuses. English vagal tone.
Yes, carotid sinus has got a lot of receptors, and the impulses once they're stretched, they pass through the glossopharyngeal nerve to nucleus solitarius, and from that goes to the parasympathetic, and parasympathetic stimulation produces bit of bradycardia along with vasodilatation, and you have syncope. So when you stretch your neck to shave your face or neck, you irritate that particular area, massage, or turning the head to one side, or use tight collar, you may get this carotid sinus hypersensitivity, which can be reproduced with the help of a ECG machine, and then you can record that there's a standstill for 3 seconds. So that is essential to make this diagnosis. So there are a couple of very silly conditions producing loss of consciousness. There are very life-threatening situations which has to be treated, like aortic stenosis, indication for surgery, or some condition where you have to put a pacemaker. So familial cause of death, young people below 40 years. Maybe the first symptom is a syncope. So never ever miss syncope. So tell me some red flag symptoms of syncope. Red flag means you cannot ignore it. These are situations.
The duration lasting more than.
Yes. So say again.
Red flag, so syncope.
Any other? Old people above 65 years, it's always red flag. Okay. associated injury, and if it's prolonged postictal phenomenon, and you get recurrent attacks of syncope, or you get a murmur over there, or family history of people who have died in less than 40 years, sudden cardiac death below 40 years, any family member, you have to think about, yes. So if the heart rate is less than 40 also, you must think something is wrong. Invariably, you have to take an ECG and see, is there anything, and then you have to proceed. So how do you differentiate syncope from epilepsy?
In epilepsy, there will be postictal confusion, postictal paralysis maybe.
There may pre-ictal aura and postictal phenomenon be there. Yes. Epilepsy patients do not become absolutely well immediately after losing consciousness. There will be a gap. Okay. So if there is associated injuries, then we must investigate why this syncope has taken place. It may be evidence of epilepsy. You have to think why it happened like that. And in cardiac syncope, characteristically they become pale. Characteristically become pale, and they don't get any warning. Unlike in epilepsy, there may be aura and postictal phenomenon may be there. Okay. So simple faint like standing in a queue and so on, that is basically reflex-based dilatation and bradycardia that produces it. And you can see elderly people when they micturate, also they have syncope. That's called as micturition syncope. It occurs in male patients, not female. Why?
Because of the, I don't know.
Females micturate in sitting position, gentlemen micturate in standing position. That's the reason. Simple question. Eh? Okay. So what is the cough syncope?
Cough syncope is
very muscular people, very healthy people. When they have a bout of cough, they keep on coughing. In between, the intrathoracic pressure is so high, there is no blood flowing into the heart at that time, and transiently there is diminished amount of blood supply to the brain and the faint. That's called as cough syncope.
Cough syncope.
When we discuss cough, we say three complications of cough commonly. One is violent cough produces fractured rib. That's very positive aspect. Two, it can produce pneumothorax. Third one is cough syncope. These occur usually in very healthy people, very muscular people. When they cough violently, and they get complications. So that's much about. Okay, coming to back to the patient. Patient has pain in the shoulder and transient loss of consciousness. What do you think it is?
It indicates a arterial occlusion which may lead to the syncope.
Why? Which artery is occluded and why there is syncope? Which artery is occluded in the upper limb? Upper limb claudication. Which artery is occluded? Which blood vessel supplies the upper limb?
Subclavian artery.
Subclavian artery. So how does subclavian artery produce loss of consciousness?
It could be due to a subclavian steal phenomenon.
How does it occur?
When there is a occlusion proximal to the origin of the vertebral artery.
So what happens?
The blood flow, the direction of flow in the vertebral artery is reversed. So blood will flow down from the vertebral artery into the subclavian artery.
So where does the vertebral artery get blood supply then? If the subclavian is occluded?
From the opposite side, from the junction of the basilar artery.
Okay, they're from junction of basilar artery. So who gets ischemia?
The brainstem, posterior.
Which part of the brainstem is in charge of your conscious level?
The anterior circle.
Anterior
prefrontal.
No. We are talking about vertebral artery. It's all right to the posterior circulation. No. So where is your center for your conscious level?
Reticular or activating system
is situated in pons.
Okay. The brainstem.
Pons.
Okay.
So that is a possible case of subclavian steal syndrome. Right. On examination, what do you find?
On examination, the patient is febrile with a temperature of 101 degree Fahrenheit, and she also has pallor and no palpable lymph nodes. Then thyroid is also palpable but not tender. Then BP, the right upper limb BP is 180 over 100, whereas the left upper limb is 100 over 70.
So which
Other
limb
systems are
is normal?
The right limb is normal.
Right limb is normal. So how do you explain the asymmetry of the blood pressure on the two limbs?
The asymmetry can be explained, yes, sir, because of the left subclavian artery being occluded. It could result in a decreased pulsation as well as BP on the left brachial artery.
Normally, what's the difference between the two upper limbs? Are the same
Normally,
or?
It is under 10 millimeters.
No, normally is there a difference between the two upper
mercury.
limbs? Usually, is there a difference between two upper limbs?
There won't be any difference, sir.
Normally, up to 10 millimeters mercury can be different in two upper limbs. That's the usual. 10 is expected. Up to 10, you don't think it's abnormal. Okay. And this patient had tenderness of the left side of the neck. Possibilities are there.
Left side of the neck.
What are the possibilities?
Tenderness of the left side of the neck. Common. It could be due to a cervical radiculopathy.
Radiculopathy will not be having tenderness, no? Pain will be there.
Okay, sir. Then,
okay, what are structures in the neck? Left side of the neck, what are structures?
The left part of the thyroid gland.
Yes, so can it be thyroid?
Artery.
Thyroid can be inflamed, but here thyroid is non-tender. Can carotid artery be tender?
Yes, sir.
It can be, eh? How?
Can be tender.
So when carotid is inflamed, you get pain. That's called as carotidynia. Okay. And other structures in the neck are?
Internal jugular vein, external jugular vein.
Yeah, jugular veins are there. There are lymph nodes. Anyway, they are also not neck. So we presume that possibly it is tenderness of the carotid here. This patient's pulse rate is 80 regular, but left radial pulse was not palpable. Okay. When you find such a situation, what are the things you do next? How do you examine this patient further?
We check all the peripheral pulsations.
That's true. In the left upper limb, what will you do? We have to find out whether it's acute or chronic. So you have to measure the size of the muscles. Is there wasting? You have to specifically mention about the skin. Is there trophic changes? To specifically look for his nails and trophic changes. Okay, you have to palpate for temperature on the two sides and see difference.
Okay.
And the radial is not felt, you have to go for brachials. Brachial is not felt, you go for subclavian. Okay. So subclavian cannot be easily palpated, but you can auscultate for it. Okay. So the possibilities you are considering in this case are?
Could be most likely due to vasculitis, large vessel vasculitis.
Large vessel vasculitis. Okay. So systemic symptoms, asymmetrical pulse, and anisostigmia. Okay. So systemic symptoms are pertaining to inflammation. Asymmetric pulse, you said large vessel involvement. So can you tell me some causes for asymmetric pulse?
Asymmetric pulse, within physiological limits would be under 10 millimeters. Beyond that, it could be due to occlusions. It could be due to thoracic outlet syndrome, like cervical rib.
Very good, very good. Okay, what else?
It could be coarctation of aorta can produce.
Coarctation of aorta, where is the usual lesion?
On the arch of the.
No, usually it is distal to the left subclavian. Okay. So upper limb will be spared.
Okay, sir.
But there is a rare variety of coarctation where the coarctation can be proximal to left subclavian, in which case you can have absent pulse on the left side. Other causes of absent pulse on the left side?
Absent pulses on the left side, aortic dissection.
Okay, very good. Aortic dissection can have asymmetric pulse. Excellent. Okay. Common things. These are rare things, no? Common things.
Fibrosis of the left.
Yeah.
Atherosclerosis.
Atherosclerosis is commonly to the lower limb that's first coming, Upper limb is rarely affected to start with. And the age of the patient also not favorable. You see, embolism is one condition where you can have absent pulse. You can have aberrant blood vessel. You can have a problem. If somebody has taken your blood vessel for a graft, you may see scar also, and vessel will not be there. If somebody has done a procedure on your blood vessel like an angiogram through the brachial artery, again, you may find pulse may be feeble
feeble on one side
or small. There are other situations like supravalvular aortic stenosis, where the occlusion of these big branches can be seen. And pediatric ward, you would have seen patients who are basically cyanosed, who undergo surgery. Following that, you get absent pulse. What condition is that? What surgery is done? Phallus tetralogy. What surgery? It's a Blalock tossing shunt. So it's a communication between pulmonary artery and subclavian artery, and you find the vessel is small. So the blood is sent through the pulmonary artery to the lungs instead of going to the upper limb. So vessel may be less. The pulse from that side will be feeble, and blood pressure will also be less. So these are the few conditions which must come to your mind. And last but important is patients like this who are having what is called as pulseless disease or reversed coarctation, otherwise called as Takayasu arthritis. So you said about this thoracic outlet syndrome. Tell me conditions coming under this category.
Could be due to a tumor of the apex of the lung.
Cervical is the commonest.
Cervical.
Yes. Then fibrous bands may be there. Okay. Tell me what the test you do on the bedside to see this thoracic outlet syndrome.
Flexing the neck to the ipsilateral side and
what is Roos test? What's Edson's test? What's costoclavicular test? What is Halsted maneuver? What is Wright's test? And what is Allen's test? So these are things you have to read now about the, so in relation to the condition we have already mentioned. So you said there is a large vessel vasculitis. So what is a large vessel vasculitis?
Large vessel vasculitis means predominantly the large vessels are involved. So
name the large vessels of upper limb.
Large vessels of the upper limb, subclavian artery, axillary artery, brachial artery.
Okay, the large vessel is a vessel till it enters an organ. Okay, so radial artery is a large artery till it enters your hand.
Okay, sir.
Okay, further branches are called as medium vessel. And small vessel is what you cannot see. Okay, so large vessel is aorta and its branches. Vessels with elastic membrane. Okay, they are called as large vessel. Medium vessels, once they enter an organ, they are called as medium vessel. Renal artery, not before it enters, but it enter. Small blood vessels supplying the nerves, vasa nervosa, they are medium vessels. Celiac artery is medium vessel. And small vessels are just like retinal vessels, glomerular vessels, the ENT organs, alveoli, brain, skin, which you cannot see with your naked eye. They are called as small vessels. So this concept is very important. Large vessel has got elastic membrane. Okay.
Okay, sir.
There should be clarity of expression. Okay. So this is the picture of a large vessel becoming medium vessel. Ultimately, small vessel in a different color is given. Okay. So large vessel vasculitis are different types. Small vessels are different, and still medium vessels are different. So large vessel, Takayasu and giant cell. Basic difference between them.
Takayasu occurs in a young age group, young females.
And giant cell?
Less than 40 years. Giant cell occurs above 50 years of age.
Giant cell is a disease of old people.
Old age.
Commonly they come with headache as a predominant symptom, and inflammatory pain of the shoulders and hips, the morning stiffness, polymyalgia rheumatica. That's the large vessel. Okay.
Okay,
And
sir.
also, as this patient is hypertension, Steele syndrome, claudication, asymmetry of the pulse, systemic manifestations of inflammation. Then you have got medium vessel vasculitis like polyarteritis nodosa, and you have seen patients in the pediatric ward with red eyes, red lips, desquamation,
Yes, sir.
heart blocks, aneurysm of the coronaries, Kawasaki disease. And then you have got small vessels, immune complex small vessel vasculitis, cryoglobulinemia, inoxazoline purpura, hypercomplementemic, and GBM. And then your ANGA-associated small vessel vasculitis, MPO.
Wegener.
Yeah, the term Wegener is not more used now. New term is granulomatosis with polyangiitis. And so Church now use the term eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis. Okay, so there's ANGA positive, ANGA negative, two groups. ANGA negative is given above, and ANGA positive given below. So this picture will be helpful for you to memorize what's meant by medium small. Basically, all these are confined to their group, and they don't mix each other. So what are the common manifestations of large vessel vasculitis?
Large vessel vasculitis can produce asymmetry of the pulses and blood pressures. Can also cause symptoms of ischemia.
Yes, as you see this patient, claudication, asymmetric blood pressure, absent pulse, bruise, aorta is dilated, and vascular hypertension. So this is how it happens like that. Medium vessel is slightly different, paniculitis, ulcers, livedo reticularis. You may be seeing a net-like appearance in the skin, gangrene. Last time we had monovirus multiply, microaneurysm, vascular hypertension. Small vessels will be having what's called palpable purpura, skin lesions, vesiculobular lesions, and even articarias, kidney involvement, small vessels, hemorrhage in the lungs, splinter hemorrhages, eye manifestation, uveitis, scleritis, and ulcers in the bowel producing bleeding. So this is a different spectrum, and there can be overlap among them. But basically, polyarteritis nodosa is a medium vessel vasculitis. Yet rarely it produces small and large, and it is usually affecting only the arteries, and commonly it does not affect the venous system. All other vasculitis, there may be involvement of venous system. Also, they may affect the other sized vessels, all predominantly one type. So, differential diagnosis of absent pulse you already mentioned, can be embolism, can be APLA, large vessel vasculitis, preceptural incoartation, dystenosis, fibromuscular dysplasia. Can you tell a few lines about it?
It's a rare entity. It's not commonly seen in India. Then it produces not just stenosis but also aneurysms and torsion of the arteries.
Fibromuscular dysplasia is commonly seen in females, predominantly coming as renal hypertension. Okay, what's a bruit?
Bruit is a turbulent flow through the artery that can be auscultated.
That's correct. It's a turbulence that produces when the artery is auscultated. So what produces turbulence?
Any sort of an occlusion.
It can be occlusion or it can be excess blood flow. Excess blood flow can produce a type of sound that's also called as bruit. So excess blood flow can be one cause. So this is called as augmentation bruit. For example, if your femoral artery is slightly occluded, renal artery is occluded, you get a bruit. But here coming to the vertebral bruit, sometimes excess blood flow taking place through the vertebral artery in the reverse direction. That's an example of augmentation bruit. Augmentation bruit of the vertebral artery takes place when there's bilateral carotid occlusion, partial occlusion, and also the current subclinic Steele syndrome, sometimes in hemangioma. Okay, so bruits are important. Where do you get bruit? Where do you localize it? Coming to the abdominal bruit, where do you get it?
renal bruit can be auscultated infralateral to the supralateral to the umbilicus.
Just above either side of umbilicus. Yes, aortic bruit anywhere along the aorta, and if it is at the site of bifurcation, it is at the level of umbilicus. And depending upon site of the mesenteric artery and all, you will get bruits in different positions. So bruit on the neck. What source of bruit in the neck?
The carotid artery.
Carotid artery, where do you auscultate for? Medial side of the sternomastoid. Okay, right. Then,
Okay. Then
any other bruit?
subclavian artery.
Where do you auscultate for subclavian bruit?
Between the two heads of the sternocleidomastoid.
It is paraclavicular, just above the clavicle, supraclavicular area, or the clavicular just below, paraclavicular area. And where do you get the vertebral bruit? Suboccipital area along the anterior border of the trapezius. Okay, so I am not good in pictures. What I try to draw is a sternoma. Can you see the clavicle? First picture. You can see the ear and the clavicle.
Yes, sir.
And you can see two heads of sternomastoid. Just medial to that, I put some mark. No, some cross I put. No, that's a possible site where you get to a carotid bruit. And from the back, you see the second picture from the back. You can see suboccipital area. You can see along the anterior margin of the trapezius. The last picture, subclavian bruit, supraclavicular area or the clavicle just below. You may get paraclavicular area. Picture is not good, hand-drawn picture, so sorry for that. I'm not good in pictures. So with this condition,
Yes,
what is the investigation you plan for this patient?
First we start with the hemogram to evaluate anemia.
Hemogram is good, anemia is good. You said inflammatory disease, no? So first two things are for inflammation. Okay?
Yes, sir. So,
ECG and X-ray important because hypertensive patient there may be cardiomegaly or dilated aorta. Okay. Then confirmatory test is by doing a
CT angiogram.
that will show areas of stenosis. Okay, whatever site is there, you may get the correct site. So structurally you will know where is the problem, how much is the problem, and how long is the problem. But if you want to see inflammatory component, then you will have to go for MR angiogram. And if you want to specifically see all the sites of inflammation and quantitate it, you may have to go for a PET scan, which is not commonly done. So the CT angiogram is the commonly done. One close differential diagnosis is tuberculous arthritis. To avoid it, you have to exercise chest and you have to do and properly examine this patient. It can mimic the patient sometimes. Okay. Many times these patients are treated as tuberculosis and subsequently find it is not tuberculosis, it is only Takayasu. And ANM if done, it is negative. Okay. What are complications you expect?
It can be renal artery stenosis can produce hypertension.
Yes, wherever there is stenosis, there can be ischemia. And wherever there is stenosis, post-stenotic aneurysm can be there. And this can predispose for dissection. Because proximal to that, there is a lot of pressure building up. So there can be dissection. And anytime it can go for accelerated hypertension. And they are likely candidates for MI and stroke. And they can have retinal vasculitis as well. So complications are ever so many. It's a life-threatening disease. How will you treat this patient now?
Treatment, medically we manage the patient by administering systemic steroids, then aspirin.
High steroids, anti-inflammatory dose of steroid is 1 mg per kg. That should be the dose. Once you give steroids for a long time, more than 3 weeks, more than 15 milligram for more than 3 weeks, invariably you have to give them prophylaxis against osteoporosis. Otherwise, high dose steroids produce osteoporosis. Minimal trauma can produce fractures. So take care of that when you give steroids. So this is a patient who may require steroids for a long time. And after some time, the patient may develop steroids side effects. So you may give some steroid sparing agents like cyclophosphamide, methotrexate, MMF, or cytarabine. And if the patient is not improving, you are not satisfied, you can go ahead with tocilizumab, one of the biologicals. And then, of course, strictures where necessary surgery, revascularization, or even some stent. That's also possible. Okay. So these particular cases, so activity of disease has to be monitored as you follow up this patient. So symptoms will tell the activity, fever, anorexia, weight loss. Those constitutional things will tell you patient is coming under control. CRP, and if necessary, you go for a PET. That's all. So symptoms itself tell you that this is arrested. CRP will also help. Okay. Now let's go to some questions for JR. Okay. How to differentiate intramural obstruction?
Hello, sir.
How will you recognize embolism?
Embolism, usually patient presents with sudden intraluminal embolism can, according to the vessels that is involved, if it is a carotid artery embolism, patient may present with sudden onset, transient loss of consciousness, syncope. If it is a coronary artery embolism, patient may present with sudden onset chest pain, dyspnea.
Okay. How do you recognize APLA?
Antiphospholipid antibody syndromes usually presents with, from the history itself we can identify, that is patient will complain of, in the history itself we can obtain the history of recurrent abortions. Patient may have history of fever with joint pains.
No. 4 things for APLA: arterial thrombus, venous thrombus, 3 thrombocytopenia, and 4 is abortion, and the background of antibody. So 4 things are the arterial thrombus, venous thrombus, fetal wastage, thrombocytopenia, and
recurrent abortions, more than 2 abortions.
And then you have got antibody. That's how we diagnose it. Okay, large vessel we already discussed. Presubclavian coarctation we mentioned. What about supravalvular aortic stenosis? What is supravalvular aortic stenosis?
It is usually seen in patients with Turner syndrome.
No. Turner syndrome, you get pulmonary stenosis. Turner syndrome, what you get aortic stenosis? Coarctation of aorta. No. Coarctation of aorta, not this one. So it is a component of Williams syndrome. What is Williams syndrome?
The patient presents with specific fascias known as Elfin fascias. Elfis fascias.
Elfin phase.
Elfin fascias, yes.
2. Intellectual disability. 3. Hypercalcemia. And what genetic abnormality they got? Deletion of the elastin gene of chromosome 7. Long arm 1123. Where is the lesion in supravalvular aortic stenosis? Just above the sinus of Valsalva in 70% of the cases, and 30% to be a diffuse narrowing of the ascending aorta. And what are the physical findings you get in supravalvular aortic stenosis?
You may get
aortic valvular murmur, just like aortic valvular murmur. It's an aortic area, you get a stenotic murmur. How do you differentiate from valvular aortic stenosis?
Murmur will be more on the.
When this valvular aortic stenosis, you may get a click, which is absent here. And valvular aortic stenosis may be characterized by a leak, diastolic murmur, that will also be absent here. Okay, and A2 is usually increased in this case because of elevated pressure in the aorta proximal to the stenosis. So you get a loud A2 with a thrill. Where is the thrill in supravalvular aortic stenosis? Usually in the aortic area, it also extends to the suprasternal area. Okay, these are the clinical features to differentiate the two, and you get asymmetry of the carotid pulse, asymmetry of the radial pulse, and you may get asymmetry of the blood pressure. That's a very important a question. You must know everything about supraval aortic stenosis, how to differentiate from this one. Okay, so cervical rib, he has already mentioned it. Post CABG, you can see post BT shunt. Can you tell something more about BT shunt?
Alloplastic shunt, it is done for
Yes.
Fallet's pathology. You create a shunt between the pulmonary artery and aorta. This
Aorta. If it's aorta, why only left upper limb pulse is weak?
subclavian.
Okay. So, radial arterial catheterization is the next one. Can this patient be a case of IgG4 disease?
Yes, in IgG4 disease, usually it can be this is the same presentation for IgG4 disease, but you can differentiate by biopsy. That is, you may get lymphoplasmacytic infiltrations and IgG4.
Classical pathological appearance.
Sir?
What's a classical pathological appearance under the microscope?
You may get lymphoplasmacytic infiltrations in case of IgG4 disease.
What is the description? Storiform.
Storiform.
Okay.
Yes.
You heard about it. Okay. I would like to ask you one more question, possibly the last. What are the types of Steele syndrome you know of? One is you said classical subclavian Steele syndrome.
Okay.
Now tell me something about coronary subclavian syndrome. Coronary subclavian Steele syndrome. Any idea?
Don't know, sir.
Where do you get arteriograft for CABG?
Sir?
Arteriograft. Where do you get it from? Sometimes you get it from the internal mammary artery.
Yes.
When you use internal mammary artery, when you do vigorous work with your upper limb, the blood may pass from the internal mammary artery to your upper limb. So it steals blood from the coronaries. This is called as coronary subclavian Steele syndrome. Okay.